I'll introduce you, Dave. Dave is our CISO here at Datashield. He's the one who gets everything going. He is also a thought leader within our industry. He is just an overall great guy, helps run the SOC, and he was internally promoted recently to our CISO. So we're really proud of that. We've got a lot of stuff going on at Datashield, and he's kind of the guy who keeps it all together, keeps it running.
Wow, quite an introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Dave. Okay, so we've got Dave, Mallory, and me. I'm just the marketing person for Datashield. I kind of coordinate a lot of the events, the stuff that goes online, all that kind of web management stuff. But I don't have a strong background in cybersecurity, but I'm starting to learn more about it. So I'm really excited meeting people who don't have a lot of experience in cybersecurity either, but they're looking to start their career. Or there's a lot of people I've encountered who are actually getting a formal education in cybersecurity. So there is a large amount of people that are studying now to get into the industry, and that's really exciting. Well, it looks like we're just going to kind of jump in, and if Deidre hops in, we'll introduce her. But I just had a couple questions that I wanted to get through with you guys, and I thought it would be a really interesting topic to share. So the first one I wanted to talk about was sort of the cybersecurity job market as a whole. And so my first question is, where are you seeing the most demand in the job market?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, in general, security is a, a rising industry. I mean, we've been saying that for a while. I don't know where the top end of the industry winds up being, but it continues to grow. Especially, I mean, you just have to look at the news to understand that there's a huge demand for it out there. So, as that pertains to actual positions and people, I don't know that there's one type of role or type of competency that is more preferable or kind of more in demand than others, at least from a like a SOC perspective. I think people definitely have a hard time hiring any kind of security person in general. And if there is a generalist position in the security domain, it's probably that kind of security engineering role, a little bit of a hybrid of everything. So you have someone who can do some basic security operations work. They can do an investigation, but they can also maybe help configure a security tool and can help, with a little bit of infrastructure and architecture. So kind of that jack of all trades type security engineering position is going to generically be in the most demand, unless you start to get into specialist groups such as ourselves. I mean, we are a SOC, we do specialize in security, and our demands are not really always going to reflect the needs of the industry at large. But yeah, I mean, if you're a security engineer, you're in demand no matter what organization you're looking at going to.
Yeah, definitely. And Cassidy, if you don't mind, I'll introduce myself as well really quick. So
Yeah, of course.
my name's Mallory Phelps. I am the manager of recruiting for HireRising. So HireRising, we're a locally Phoenix-based IT staffing company. So obviously we work really heavily in the cybersecurity space, but we do, everything in IT from development to infrastructure. So to kind of just piggyback off what Dave said, it's security and hiring in security is tough right now. So we see a lot of clients that we partner with hiring for, entry-level SOC roles. Those are usually pretty, easy to fill. Kind of that niche skill set that is really difficult for us right now is that mid-market skill set. So kind of those middle security engineers, like, there seem to be several security architects out there on the market that, obviously are highly in demand, but they're out there. But kind of that mid-level skill set where we're looking at 3 to 5 years of, high-level analyst work or, that middle level of engineering work is kind of tough to come by, especially in the Phoenix market. So, what's great is a lot of companies that we're working with, especially because of COVID, are now kind of changing their hiring practices and opening things up to more remote workers, which is awesome. Because at the end of the day, in cybersecurity, it doesn't really necessarily matter where you live as long as you can get the job done. So a lot of that work can be done from home, which is really great. But yeah, I think that one good thing about connecting with a recruiter, let's say you're trying to get into this space, is really having that inside access. So partnering with a recruiter kind of helps you understand maybe some of those skill sets that aren't listed on the job description, those top priorities to hiring managers, more about the culture. There's only so much you can learn if you hop on Glassdoor or some of these websites where it's, disgruntled employees only go there to kind of voice their concerns about an organization. It's much more valuable to partner with a recruiting agency that has like an intimate relationship with a hiring manager or a team and can provide insight about their culture and what's really important to them from a skill set perspective.
Perfect. That was actually going to be my question, but I'll just skip on to the next one because you explained it perfectly about why people in the cybersecurity industry should maybe reach out to a recruiter. My second question is actually for Dave, and it goes, how does an MSSP like us differ for a job versus an internal SOC? What skills wise are the pros and cons of those kind of jobs? Oh, I think you muted.
Good question. I was. It kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. An MSSP is going to be a lot more specialized. If you come into an organization, let's say, like you mentioned, the mid-market type of kind of small enterprise, maybe not even quite there yet, they're really looking for generalists. They're looking for someone who has a wider IT background. So maybe that person that they're looking at is not necessarily a security expert, but they are new to security or have been exposed to it. Maybe they were a client support technician in the past and they kind of got into security that way. That's really the kind of person they're looking for. It doesn't mean that person can't be very effective and knowledgeable and suitable for a SOC or an MSSP type role. But when we are looking for candidates, we are a security company. So we're looking for someone who really has some significant background and capability in that security space. Like they need to have a kind of another level of understanding and competency. Whereas a mid-market company or even maybe a large enterprise is really just looking for that general knowledge because they're going to have their own different processes. It's going to be a little more complicated for them, and they're probably going to be expecting to teach that person a little bit about their own tooling and processes. Where SOC, we're coming in, it's like you need to hit the ground running with some serious security knowledge.
Okay, awesome. The next subject I kind of wanted to touch on was job experience. What certifications and skills are in really high demand right now, and how do you recommend people find a good mentor or resources for that?
Yeah, and I think this kind of ties into a question we had that was just asked about certificates and job experience. So I'll try to answer this as comprehensively as I can. Certificates and job experience are not always looked at from a quantitative perspective. We look at people in terms of their quality and what they can do in a technical interview, and to me that matters more than a certification. Now that doesn't mean that certifications or job experience or formal education doesn't matter, because it does. It absolutely does. But ultimately it matters what you can do in the room when we put something in front of you. We've hired people that didn't have certifications. We've hired people that didn't have any kind of formal education. I think it's perfectly reasonable for someone who has no formal education in security to be extremely successful. There is such a thing as self-teaching. There are so many resources out there. You don't necessarily need a degree as kind of a stamp of approval, at least a Datashield, to get in the door. Now, what degrees and certifications do signify, in my opinion, as someone who's hired a lot of people, is that it is a kind of a confirmation that they're willing to go the extra mile to train themselves. Now, it doesn't mean that their training can't be effective if they never wind up with a certification. That's fine. Plenty of smart people don't have certifications, but a certification at least shows that they are understanding of what the industry is looking for. They have taken the time, in some cases, spent the money to go out and get it. Or if it's a formal education, they've stuck it with it for a while. They have more than just a passing interest in security. And oftentimes a degree, to me, signifies that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think to go along with that as well, Not that you necessarily have to have two of the three, but let's just say, you have zero work experience, but you have a certification and, a degree, like that's going to be more helpful than just one of those, or, job experience plus a certification, and no degree. But that being said, I totally agree with Dave. More and more companies that we work with are phasing out degree requirements. It's on the job training is so much more valuable. I agree with the persistence piece and showing that you can stick with something for 4 years or 5 years, however long it takes to get a degree is awesome. But people can just be as adequately prepared without that degree. So I think that the one area where it kind of does set you above and beyond is, like, let's just say you're applying on an Indeed or a LinkedIn, something like that, to have that degree or to have that certification listed on your resume may kind of give you that leg up sometimes. If we sometimes we have applications or a role that we're working on and we get hundreds of applicants. So for recruiters, when they're going through that, they might have to pick and choose. But at the end of the day, hiring managers want to find somebody that can do the job. And so it's not all about what's on paper. Sometimes it just might give you an initial leg up if people are looking through resumes. But I would say the certifications that we see that are really valued, definitely like the CEH, depending on what your environment is, or obviously the CISSP. We have a lot of hiring managers that we work with that really love to see those certifications.
Yeah, and if you're looking to get your foot in the door with like an MSSP or a SOC, any of the GX certs, so any kind of SAN cert is pretty valuable. Those are typically more difficult certs and are a good indication that someone can at least get to that level academically. And there's another question here. I think maybe it's a kind of related question. I wanted to know if there are any standout entry level or ways to stand out for entry level jobs if you don't have certifications, but you have if you don't have formal experience, but rather years of IT experience and certification. So I would say in that case, in this situation, you've been in IT for a while, you've been around the block a few times, but you don't have the certifications, whatever the case may be, you're just lacking in some regard. I would say get involved with the security community in some way. And I know that is kind of a daunting task at times. It means you might have to spend a little bit of extra time on a weekend or on an evening or volunteering in some way. I used to never like that answer when I asked those kinds of questions, but there is something to it, right? You're able to kind of reach out and get to know people. And I will say when we're looking at a resume and they don't have a ton of security experience, but they have maybe a bullet saying, oh, they listed volunteer experience working with the cyber range or working on some kind of community cyber project, or you're a member of something and you regularly attended, that means a lot. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've become a security genius by virtue of doing that, but it means that you showed interest and that you at least try to advance your knowledge in some way.
That's a really good answer. Thank you so much for answering that. The next questions we have are kind of on the diversity in the workplace topic. So obviously diversity in gender, age, race is being prioritized by many organizations. There was a study done that SOCs are still primarily composed of a lot of all male teams, but that is shifting as we go. So my question for Mallory would be, what programs and organizations do you recommend for job seekers that are in minority or underrepresented communities?
That's a great question. And I think that, so there are obviously amazing organizations, especially I'm Phoenix based, so I know mostly about Phoenix based ones, but one organization that HireRising has partnered with and kind of supported is Girls in Tech. They have a specific job board that you can kind of go and look at posts for diversity and inclusion type roles. But one thing I will say that kind of mirrors that trend that we've been seeing across the board, not just in cybersecurity, but again, in tech as a whole in Phoenix, which is really exciting to me, is we have specific companies that are reaching out to us and they're saying, hey, diversity and inclusion is our number one priority for our hiring this year. How can you help us find candidates that come from diverse backgrounds? We want to bring different perspectives to our team. We want to grow our team in different ways. Can you help us in partnering to do that? And so, for HireRising, that's one of our missions as well internally. So it's super exciting to me to kind of see that trend. And it's really, I can't say this enough, 2021, we've had so many organizations reach out to us and say, this is our mission for hiring this year. So it's fabulous. And we're really here to kind of partner and help them do that and grow in that space. So again, another reason to reach out to a recruiter if you come from a non-traditional background, or have interest in getting into a team, but maybe feel like you've been looked over for a variety of different reasons. We have insight into that, that culture of the team, and can kind of give you perspective on if that employer is having, diversity and inclusion in their hiring practices.
Awesome. I know we have a few different female roles at our position and in our company, Dave. Do you want to speak a little bit to what they bring to the team, if they bring any unique experiences or perspectives in the SOC?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I'd like to start off by saying I don't think that the core virtues that we're looking for in a candidate are exclusive to any one gender or race or background or creed. I think people have always been able to come to Datashield regardless of what they are.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of those qualifying factors, they've always been able to get in the door and be successful, and I think that's exemplified in some of the people that we have working in Datashield right now. We have women and other underrepresented categories working at Datashield, and I'm pretty proud of that. We've always been very transparent and pretty equal across the board. There's no way you could get thrown out by any kind of other factors such as that, and I'm sure you can attest.
Yeah.
No, I think it is valuable having some different viewpoints. Oftentimes there's a culture that develops to where people just typically do the same thing because that's what they've always known, and again, I don't think that that's exclusive to one gender. I think a lot of times it's just about bringing in different viewpoints, and whether that comes from a man or a woman or someone of a different race. I think that's fine. It's just about being accepting of the ideas regardless of as to where they come from. And if people have hangups with that, I mean, we're all working in a situation where the means of communication is just names on a Zoom webinar, right? If you log into a meeting, everyone is kind of reduced to this de facto sense of equality because we're all just this name on a little checkboard meeting. So if people had hangups about that before, about what someone looked like or what someone was, then really it's even less of a factor. They don't have to see that person every day because now we're all in Zoom meetings. So
Right. I mean, I can speak to Datashield's diversity and inclusion. I mean, we have women kind of across a lot of different departments in our company. We have them in, software development, front end development. We have them in product management. We have them in sales, and of course, we have them in marketing. So I think it's really great. Personally, I'm part of the Women in Cybersecurity, and they just launched a Phoenix chapter. So if any of you guys are in Phoenix, like you said in the chat, maybe check that out if you're a woman. I know they just launched that. And then we don't have Deidre here, but I know Deidre is big on diversity and inclusion. She's also sort of in the recruiting space, but I know that she's also hosting Day of She-Curity, which is like, a woman-focused development type thing. And I think that's really important and really cool because I think that, just from a sociological standpoint, a lot of women have traditionally felt like it's really hard to enter spaces that are really filled with men. And, when I applied for this job, even, I thought cybersecurity, I don't know a lot about that. I have interest in it. I know the hardware of computers, that kind of thing. I've built a PC. I generally know how things work, but I didn't have a lot of confidence. And I can say that working at Datashield and kind of getting plugged into the female communities here in Arizona for cybersecurity have given me a lot of confidence and a lot of reassurance that I'm in a good industry and that there is a lot of growth here and there is spaces for women to not only enter the workforce, but grow and connect with each other, because I think that's just sort of one of those weird, unique experiences that we have, but definitely interesting in that way. Definitely interesting in that I see a lot of companies, even ADT, our parent company, is really looking for diversity as well, kind of bringing in different perspectives, because again, statistically, we see a lot of cybersecurity be white males. And so it's interesting to see them try and bring in other perspectives, because you get different cultures and different languages and different interpretations of things. And I see that a lot in terms of thought leadership as well, reading analysis of events. Different cultures can understand different attacks from different, nations and things like that. They're more plugged into certain trends, and I think that's really cool as well. So there's a lot of opportunity for anybody who's in the webinar to look at your unique skill set and not see it as something that is lacking, but see it as something that is of value to a lot of the companies that are hiring. So I just wanted to plug that in since Deidre's not here. And you can go ahead, Mallory.
I love that. And to build on that, I think, as a female, a lot of times historically, like, we have different, traits, some might say, like, empathy in the workplace, or things are sometimes strengths seen to, generally speaking, for females. And not to make generalizations, but I think that in general, a lot of the candidates that I've worked with that have been from a diverse background have come, in confidence and said, hey, look, like, I've either been, passed up for a promotion in the past, or like, I didn't feel comfortable on this team because it was all males, and this was like the working environment, and this was the culture of the team, or things like that. So that's something that I've definitely, as a recruiter, run into with candidates. And so it's great to see that shift, especially, and that's why I'm so excited about it this year, to hear that from clients, and hearing them say, like, this is a priority. Like, we want to make this an inclusive workplace for whoever this is, and from every background, because that's our priority. So I'm excited. I think it's a great time to come from a diverse background and want to be in cybersecurity and IT in general, whereas historically that might not have been the case.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I would like to add, I mean, if you're concerned about the culture in a company, or maybe your background or your race or gender, I would say, if the company is truly on board with the idea of bringing in different viewpoints, and embracing people of all backgrounds and creeds, and whatever the case may be, focus on being the best. I mean, there is a lot of people are evaluated on a lot of different levels in all companies, and ultimately, as we head down this road, and I think it's for the better, being inclusive and being able to bring on different viewpoints. At the end of the day, it's going to come back to how good are you, and that is the real end result of leveling the playing field. Is it will come down to your ability, and I just have to say, we promote based on the ability and talent of people, and it doesn't matter what they look like. If you are the best, you will be treated like the best. So I would say that's my advice. Don't be intimidated. Don't let a culture bother you. Just be the best, and the rewards will come.
Agreed. So what you're saying is I'm the best, Dave. I'm the best at the marketing. Thank you. I mean, the other kind of questions I have are sort of on that job experience train again. So kind of talking about, how do people find a good mentor in this space, Dave? How did you find mentors maybe, or who were your mentors?
Yeah, it was kind of difficult at first, because I got into security as a role that was adjacent to what I was doing currently. So I was a security admin for a little while, or a system admin, excuse me. And then I got roped into vulnerability management. So I didn't even have a lot of leadership in that regard. I was just sort of assigned to that project. And then I didn't have a ton of security mentors early on. So really, I just did the best I could, and tried to learn as much as I could, and take away as much as I possibly could from that experience, and try to figure out what I wanted to do from there, because I knew I was getting some security knowledge. And then I had shortly thereafter, I had a really good shop supervisor. That's what they call things in the Air Force. Everything's a shop. And he was our flight chief, and he saw a little bit of potential, and he really encouraged me to kind of think differently about my career and what I wanted to do. So I would say, if you're looking for a mentor and you're not finding it, maybe go up a level, or seek someone who has been doing things for a long time in your organization. Oftentimes, those people who have been around the block will kind of see talent, and they'll know it when they see it, and they'll be willing to kind of indulge you a little bit, and give you some career advice. It's not always easy finding a mentor. I mean, in other workplaces, I've had kind of unfortunately, a lot of times the stereotypical SOC experience where you're just kind of the analyst there working the shift. You come and you go, and there's not a whole lot of camaraderie. And sometimes those cultures are reasons to look for other opportunities if that's the way you feel, and that's the kind of experience you have. So I would say go to a place where there is a little bit of camaraderie, and if you can't find it, seek it elsewhere. There's great ways to find people who are in security. Like some of those ways to volunteer that I mentioned, just getting to know people and finding people who've been doing things for a long time. I mean, usually you'll find good people because they've stuck with it, right? So.
Mhm. So yeah, that's a really great advice for how to find a mentor. And I know that a lot of people are struggling with that. I see that a lot in the beginner cybersecurity groups I'm in. But it's a good advice to see that if the company culture is good, there's usually someone there who you can reach out to and see like that. I know another thing that I've looked at extensively has been like the certification courses. And if you take those courses, oftentimes I feel like those instructors are pretty good. When I went to CactusCon, one of the main showrunners there was a guy who does SANS Institute courses as well. But obviously, that's not his full time job. But I thought it was really interesting that, if you take these courses or you get certifications with people, it seems like you can really branch out your network that way. And it seems like it's more geared towards developing your skills and getting to a better place than maybe just looking internally at your company if maybe they don't have the room to help you grow or the resources to help you grow. But also Mallory can probably speak to hiring up. So, making sure that your next career move, so if you're already in the cybersecurity space, actually provides opportunities to do that.
Yeah, and just to finish with the mentor piece as well, use LinkedIn as a resource. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying go on LinkedIn and spam 400 people. Just say, hey, will you be my mentor? But use LinkedIn as a resource. See if you have any mutual connections with someone. Like, let's say you find somebody on LinkedIn that you could be a potential mentor. See if you have any mutual connections with them. Try to leverage your network through school, through any organizations, like Dave said, that you have connections with. Like, try to leverage your network any way that you can, and reach out. And a lot of times, people all had to start somewhere. We all had to start somewhere, right? So we were all beginners at one point in time. And so I think for the most part, people will have that empathy and say, oh yeah, like, even if I don't have time to, do a one-on-one coffee with you every month, like, let me take a quick call and give you, tidbits on what I'm thinking and how you can progress your career. As far as career progression in general, I think it's understanding what cybersecurity, like the path that it's going in, where it's going, and understanding what skills are going to be the most important in the future. So if, it's easy to get siloed in technology and get really excited about one specific tool and then have it be out of date in 5 years. And then, your skills are kind of out of date at that point. So I think it's understanding, okay, what's the latest and greatest, and not that you always need to be chasing that, but what tools are going to stick around, what skill sets are going to stick around, what's always going to be, needed, and then constantly kind of developing new skills so that you're not just being pigeonholed into one area.
Yeah, and also I would say if you're looking for a mentor and you're not seeing them in your current workplace, sometimes it's helpful to just ask for feedback, kind of expose yourself a little bit, confide in somebody that is maybe one or two levels above you. Because I mean, let's be real. Everybody gets sucked into their own work. They may not just be chomping at the bit to go take you under their wing.
Mhm.
It may just kind of go right over their head. So if you're not really trying to find a mentor, or excuse me, if you're not really finding that, just go talk to people. I mean, ask for feedback and ask about the career progression and those kinds of things. And oftentimes that will kind of trigger the conversation. And a good manager, a good leader will see that and will kind of jog them out of their daily fog and say, okay, this person is really trying to be something a little bit more. Why don't I spend some more time with that person?
That's awesome. Well, that's all the questions I had prepared. So if you want, you guys make sure to enter in the Q&A. I think we have two little questions in there. Someone said, do you see any leniency on job postings for security for qualifications, or is it usually pretty cut and dry?
Yeah.
Yes and no. So I will say, and this is just, again, IT in general, not just security, but also with security. we have people that we work with where they have high expectations for what they want to hire for. They want to find the perfect person, or at least they have this idea of what the perfect person is. Now, that being said, things can change. So, usually the job requirements that are listed are minimum requirements, right? But sometimes we have clients that list those nice to haves. So I would try to differentiate between that when you're looking at a job description. And if you have the minimum requirements, I would say definitely give it a go. A lot of times hiring managers see those nice to haves as long shots. It would be great if somebody had one or two of those, but they don't expect that from a candidate. As long as you're meeting like the minimum requirements, that's the main thing. And even if you're a little bit shy of that, I always say, give it your best shot. Sometimes all it takes is getting in front of a hiring manager, and you could be the best culture fit in the world and they'll still want to hire you. So yes and no, there's some leniency. I don't know, Dave, what do you see?
I would love to give you guys a guide on how to psychoanalyze a job description or a job posting. I would say be mindful of the position that you're trying to apply for. So if you're looking at kind of a security analyst position, it's just seems like a generic job description or job posting, and it's need X number of years of experience, and they're talking about very general concepts. You need to understand the attack chain or incident response principles, log analysis, like those kind of general qualifications. Then I think there is a little more wiggle room. But if you start to look through there and you're seeing specific tools and you're seeing, really in the weeds requirements, maybe had to have worked with this type of company in the past. Like when you start seeing the real striations and exactness of the description, there may be less wiggle room and less leniency. So just kind of be mindful of that. It's one of those things when you see, and if you look at a lot of job descriptions, you probably have picked up, these people are looking for something really specific, while this other one seems like more of a generalized position. So
it's also what I will add right now, there's more IT jobs, at least in Phoenix, than there are skilled IT people. So hiring managers are having to be a little bit more lenient than maybe in the past, because our IT community here is taking off. Like we're in a really good space right now in Phoenix where people are just hiring like crazy. They put off hiring last year, and just because of everything that's going on, and it's just exploding right now. So it is a really good time from that sense to be looking for a job. And from that perspective, hiring managers do have to have a little bit more wiggle room on their requirements, because it is a tight market right now for individuals that have these skill sets.
Yeah.
Awesome. Next question says, it has been said that cyber is a fairly recession-proof career industry. Have you seen this be the case from a hiring perspective?
I would say it depends. It depends on who you're working for. If you're working for a security company, then chances are, yes, it's probably a little bit more resilient of a position, because those companies are going to still have business in a recession. If you have an economic downturn, all the people that they're still monitoring will still need those services to some degree. So if you can get on with a cyber focused company, a security company, then I would say yes, they are a little more resilient. Now, on the other side of the coin, if you're working as a security person in a non-security company, so let's say you're working as part of the IT department, you're on a little security team with maybe just a couple people, or previously those kinds of positions would have been open. In a recession, I think those tend to evaporate pretty quickly, because now companies are looking for ways to cut spend. Sadly, we're not there to where security is always something that has to be manned. Those companies typically will look to outsource, and those things do vary over time. There are trends. It comes and goes, but the bulk of security jobs, sad to say, are not necessarily in security focused companies. They're in large companies, and companies that just need security people, want to build little SOCs and little security teams of their own. So those, I think, are going to be more affected by a recession.
I totally agree. And I mean, we saw hopefully the biggest recession we'll see in our lifetimes last year. Let's hope, right? And in that sense, like at that point, nothing was recession proof, right? Like, I think everything came to a grinding halt, and most companies were not hiring and letting go by droves and droves and droves of people. And, to Dave's point, we kind of have seen cybersecurity come back a little bit more slowly than maybe some, essential infrastructure roles or things of that nature, just because those were essential to run the business. And sometimes, while security is extremely essential, some companies don't deem it so. And that's come back a little bit more slowly. But I think in general, with the way that the industry is going and the way that cybersecurity is going in general, I think there will always be jobs out there, whether it's, working, internally for a company or for, more of like a MSSP, things like that. So.
Awesome. Our next question says, this is for Mallory. How does HireRising differentiate from other recruiting firms? How is it honed in on finding great talent for IT roles?
Sure. I think that's a good question. At the end of the day, we're not reinventing the wheel, right? We're another recruiting firm. I think what's really important to us, like myself and my team, is our culture, our values, and how we develop relationships with our candidates. So we're a very relationship focused recruiting agency. We're not just kind of some fly by night, we throw you a couple pieces of paper and we don't really care about you from a candidate perspective. That's one thing I'm very grateful for. Every single person on my team really shows up every day and cares about their candidates and our clients. And I think that does differentiate us in some senses, because, there's a lot of agencies out there that are looking to kind of just get the job done and go home and call it a day. Every single person on my team is super passionate about what they do and making an impact on the local Phoenix market, and really facilitating this great match between candidates and clients. So it's something we're all really passionate about.
Awesome. This next question says, are there any tips to get your resume noticed when you are putting in for a job without a warm introduction or a referral?
I'd love to turn this into a resume gripe session, but I'll refrain. I would say keep it short. Please don't send us or send anybody a 5 or 6 page resume. Don't have time for it. I don't mean to be like that resume snob, but it's a thing. Like when someone uploads a 5 or 6 page resume, it's too much. It's too much to get through. So conciseness, being very direct about your previous work experience, no ambiguity, and just keep it super cut and dried. As far as ways to get it noticed, you don't need a picture of yourself on there. You don't need any kind of fancy formatting. It just needs to be a solid, good resume, one that kind of speaks to the type of things that we're trying to do here at Datashield. I won't speak for any other company. I don't hire for other companies, but I'll say at least at Datashield, we want to see things that are would be useful to us, right? Do a little bit of research about the company. It's okay to have different resumes that kind of speak to that company's needs. I think that's important. If you see that you're that the company's using maybe certain tools, or they have certain partners on their pages, certain technologies that they work with, and if you have experience with that, kind of highlight it, bring it up to the front, and let us know. As far as any other ways to really stand out, grammatical errors will get you standing out in the wrong way. Will get you noticed for the wrong reasons. And any kind of weird timeline and ambiguity about what gaps in employment. Mallory, I'm sure you might have more advice than I do on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of that is correct. The biggest thing is there was always this, understanding that you had to keep your resume to 1 page. You definitely don't. It's okay if it bleeds into 2 pages. I would say 2 is probably pretty safe. When you get into that 3, 4, 5, 6, I've even seen 10-page resumes. I agree with Dave. It'll stand out in the wrong way. But I also think, there's this trend where cover letters are kind of a thing of the past now. So I do agree that it's really important to tailor your resume to the position that you're applying to. So I'm not saying, fabricate your work history and add a whole bunch of keywords from the job description. in there, and just to get, your resume noticed, because that's again going to be in the wrong way, and that'll get sussed out on your first interview pretty quickly. But if you have specific tools that are mentioned in the job description, highlighting those instead of a cover letter, using that objective section of the resume. I think that's super important, especially if you're trying to transition careers, or if you're trying to gain a new career, highlighting skill sets there, or why you're passionate about cybersecurity, or you're looking for a SOC analyst role and you're currently obtaining your certification in CEH or something like that. Using that objective section to kind of show a little bit of that personality and highlight what your goals are can be super important. And then keeping your, what you've done for each position pretty brief, concise, and really highlighting tangible things. So, not just using a whole bunch of words that don't necessarily, like another company, it wouldn't make sense to them. Like, what did you tangibly do? Did you use, Splunk to do X, Y, and Z? Or, how did you use the tool? Were you doing log analysis and packet captures or whatever? Making it super concise and tangible so that when a hiring manager is reading it, they're like, okay, they did X, Y, and Z with this tool. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would say, kind of to Mallory's point, it's okay to put a little bit of a less traditional blurb about yourself on a resume, kind of the objectives part of the resume. Just describing a little bit about who you are, what you're trying to do, the kind of things you're looking for. I think that's great. I think that is actually a good way to stand out.
Cool. Question we have is, which specific cybersecurity certifications do you recommend for a beginner? There are a lot, but they will start somewhere.
Yeah. You'll probably get a dozen different viewpoints depending on who you ask about certifications. I will say always that regardless of what the mood about a certain certification is, it's always what you make of it. A lot of people were kind of down on CEH for a while. That the reasons for that are completely beside the point. But people will get down on certain certifications, say, "Oh, don't get that one; it's not worth it." Well, actually, all that information in there, all the information in those books, it's still relevant. It's still good. I never found any blatant inaccuracies in CEH. I mean, everything is really what you make of it. I would say if you're looking for one and you just have no idea where to start, just go get Security Plus. That's still a really good certification. You can, if you really apply yourself, you can get it in the span of just a couple of weeks. And I'm not saying it's an easy certification. You got to really study, but it was a requirement when I was graduating from our technical training in the Air Force. Everybody had to get Security Plus in the span of about 2 weeks. It boiled down to 10 days. So you can do it if you apply yourself. And a lot of that information is really foundational. It will really help you if you learn it. Don't just do a question bank. Actually learn the material. It'll kind of inform the discussion in an interview, and you'll have some more vocabulary and understanding to actually use in those discussions. So I always say start with Security Plus. If you have it already, you're saying, well, there's so much out there, I don't really know where to go from there. Really, the GIAC courses are excellent because they mean a lot. They're difficult. They require some hands-on training and real expertise. So I would say a good baseline is kind of GCIH, and maybe branch out from there. There's so many of them. Generally they're all really good.
For sure. And just to jump in with a little bit of research I did, if you look up the security certification progression chart, there are good charts out there that kind of go to which specialties you want to be in, and it kind of takes you through all of the certs you can get if you're interested. And additionally, I looked up the highest paying IT certifications in North America, and there were a couple, and a lot of them actually deal with specific solutions that are really in demand. So Google certified professional cloud architecture, as well as like AWS, Amazon Web Services type architecture, that kind of stuff. Those certifications seem to be in high demand as well.
Yeah, the cloud certs are extremely in demand. Phoenix, I would say right now we're super AWS heavy culture, but it's probably going to shift more towards GCP, I would say, in the next few years. But in general, I totally agree with you, Dave. Security Plus is like a good, solid way to go just when you're starting out. You just need something. But a lot of the companies that we work with, they're like, we just want to know somebody's interested in security. It doesn't matter what the cert is, as long as they've invested in it. Just shows that you've gone above and beyond to kind of invest in yourself, invest in your training. But unless you like want to go down a specific road, like you mentioned, Cassidy, and you're like, I really just want to be in security architecture or whatever, cloud-based security architecture, whatever the case might be.
Yeah, we've got people all the time that go, I just want to be a pen tester, right? And there are different lanes for that. I got Dave to do the eye roll. There we go. But it just depends on your skill set and your proclivity towards one skill set or another that will kind of determine that. But like they said, Security Plus, I always see that recommended for beginners. And there are a lot of great groups out there for beginning cybersecurity that you guys help each other study, resources, videos, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of good advice in there, depending on what your specific weaknesses might be. If you've looked at the course and you're like, I don't know a lot about this certain subject. So lots of good resources. Good question. Next question is, what are some of the things that candidates do during their interviews that actually hurt their chances of getting a job? Are there any big no-nos that absolutely disqualify people?
Oh boy. So
Yeah.
they never assume that your resume was read by a machine. And the reason I say that is that a lot of people put keywords in there. They'll maybe include things that they didn't have any experience with, and then they get called on it in the interview. So, I mean, we don't have a machine reading the resumes that are submitted, and we will ask you about the things that you put on your resume. So, one of the biggest no-nos, kind of absolute immediate disqualifiers is if you have something on a resume and we ask you about it and you're in the headlights. I've had it happen before. I had someone famously just say pass after we asked him, and then he said it multiple times. So it was very clear that he didn't understand, really what he was talking about. Other big things that are major impediments. Communication skills are, especially in the MSSP industry, very, very important. So if you have anxiety and it seems that you're going to have a hard time talking to people, that can be an issue. Communication skills are, and I realize it's kind of an intangible thing, but you really have to be capable of having a conversation with people that you've never met before. And an interview is kind of a good judge of that. And if you're worried about that, then ask people to interview you. Ask people to just ask you questions about something that you're interested in. Kind of break down those barriers of anxiety. And people. I've seen all kinds of quirks and strange things happen in interviews. People clam up and they get tight and don't want to talk about things and flood their answers. Just try to relax and try to be yourself. Ask questions. One of the best things, and this isn't really a disqualifier, but one of the ways you can kind of break that down is just ask a couple questions, kind of get that rapport going. And as soon as you're more comfortable with the person interviewing you and they are with you, then typically the interviews go a little bit better. Last thing I'll just say on disqualifiers, do not ask random off the wall questions. I had someone ask me if I believed in UFOs during the interview. I'm not even kidding. It was just one of the most surreal interviews I've ever had. But your mind may wander in an interview. Keep it under wraps. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, to that point, Dave, I think there's that fine line between showing your personality and being who you are and still maintaining that sense of professionalism, because at the end of the day, this is a workplace, it is a job. So yeah. I know, we've all been at home for a year. We're all very comfortable in our environments, and it feels different to be sitting in your own house interviewing for a job versus sitting across the table looking at somebody eye to eye in an office. But still kind of trying to maintain that sense of professionalism for yourself, whether that's you're interviewing in your bedroom, let's say, and just making your bed nice and tidy, like things like that, like making sure the backdrop of when you're interviewing virtually is as clean as it can be. And again, we're all at home right now. So there is that sense of empathy and understanding, like if the dog barks in the background or, your child's crying or things like that, but just doing your best to kind of control an environment when you're interviewing and maintaining that sense of professionalism. Don't show up to the interview in your PJs, things like that. Brush your hair. So I would say those are some things, especially interviewing virtually, that we do run into at times. Totally agree with Dave, though. There's no shame in practicing. If you're somebody that doesn't, gets nervous when they talk to new people, or, an interview can be a really nerve-wracking process for all of us, I think, right? So, taking a few deep breaths, breaths, having a few things planned out that you can say if you do get into some hot water and you're like, oh man, like just trying to buy yourself some time, whether asking an interviewer to repeat the question or, asking them if I can just take a second and regroup. All of that shows a level of professionalism and communication skills that, gives you some time to kind of rethink what you're going to say.
Yeah. And I would say another big disqualifier is just trying to, BS a question. It will never work. You're talking to people who are, in many cases, probably smarter than you, have been doing it for you. It will never work. You never try to create your own narrative or talk your way out of a question that you don't know. Just say, I don't know. And that's perfectly fine. That is in our view, a positive, right? You're admitting you don't know. And in that case, you would probably escalate to the person who would know, and that would result in a better deliverable to our clients. So it's fine if you don't know something, always just admit it. And lastly, I'll just say, the interviewers, they want to like you. Hiring is a tiring process oftentimes. They probably sat through a few other interviews. They want it to be over. They want to like you. So don't feel like you're coming up against the enemy. The interviewers are not meant to break you down and take you apart as a person and uncover your hidden faults that you didn't even know about. Everybody on that call wants to just be done with the process, like you, and hire you. So.
Yeah.
Oh, real quick, I was going to say, and on that same note, Dave, if you don't know the answer to a question and you're doing a virtual interview, don't try to Google the answer.
Yeah.
I think that's happened specifically with a candidate with you, Dave. I know that, don't try to Google it while you're in the interview. They will hear you typing, and that will not work out well in your favor.
No. I was going to say, to add on to that last point, for me, I've interviewed for a lot of jobs in the past, and I would say that even though this isn't like a no-no, it's like something to do, would be, as much as you are being interviewed, it's your opportunity to interview those people as well and really get to know their culture and really get to know what their expectations are of you. And that's something I've learned personally out of having many jobs that I actually don't like, because I was so anticipatory of getting the job and thinking that I had all the requirements for this job, but I didn't really consider, like, who is it that I'm actually going to be working under? What skills am I actually going to be able to develop here? So as much as it is an opportunity for you to be interviewed, you get to interview that company, and they're going to see that, and they're going to take that as a sign of respect that you did your research and you want to know what kind of company they are. Because at the end of the day, yeah, we all want to get paid, but we might as well get paid to work at a place that actually understands us.
Yeah.
And
Right?
it's a two-way street 100% right now with the way that the market is. Candidates do kind of have that luxury of picking and choosing, like, what's going to be the right fit for them, and how is this fit for me culturally, or like you said, advancing my skill set. So yeah, absolutely take advantage of that and come prepared with questions that are important to you. And also don't get so caught up in the interview process that you're when you are asking questions, like, pay attention to kind of responses and get real-time questions asked and feedback of that nature. Don't get so caught up in the process that you're like reading off your list of questions at the end.
Right. All right. Someone asked, what are David's thoughts on CYSA?
Yeah, I think it's a good cert. It holds weight when I see that on a resume. I know it's still kind of a new cert. I think maybe some of those standards are still being defined, but yeah, we had people take it here at Datashield, and I think it's a good cert. It's kind of that equivalent, in my opinion, like somewhere between CEH and a CIH. So, very technical, has good content, and would be glad to see that on a resume.
Cool. And then one last question. Do you guys have any funny interview stories that would also demonstrate a do or don't during the hiring process?
Yeah, I mentioned a couple. I would say, kind of about Googling questions in the middle of a interview is a classic. We've got a couple of people doing it, and you can always tell there's that question, a little bit of silence, and then maybe you hear a little bit of typing. I mean, people forget that there's like a microphone right next to their hands oftentimes on a laptop. So they'll type a little bit, and then they'll seem to come back with this perfect response. It's like, obviously you just Googled that, or you were, cheating somehow, looking up questions, whatever. Probably my all-time favorite one is, the UFO question. And then also the guy who just was saying pass, pass, pass over and over again. It was, I'll never forget that. So.
Yeah, I have too many to share in this short span of time, but what I will caution people to is the bait and switch. Like people will always find that out, especially in IT. We have that happen where, you know, one person tries to interview and their mouth isn't moving at the same rate as they're speaking because someone else is on camera trying to answer for them. So
Wow.
so it doesn't work. You will get found out eventually. So yeah, that's not a great idea either, having someone else interview for you and then being, you know, showing up to the job.
That's crazy. I'm a twin, so I could have my sister sit in, but then eventually they'd find out that I have no cybersecurity analyst skills.
Yeah, unless she's a
Um,
marketing genius too, then that would.
No, she's not, but that's funny. Yeah. I mean, I would never do that, but very funny stories, really good thing. So we're going to wrap up here. We're getting to the end of the hour, but I just wanted to thank you guys for coming and speaking and giving your insight. I want to thank everybody who attended. And I just want to remind you all that we will have a blog coming out on our website under Datashield's blog on our website that will have some of the jobs from us and our partners that we compiled for you guys. The positions really range across the board from anywhere from support, technical support to sales as well. So if you have good knowledge of that and you just want to get your foot in the door, and maybe you're good at selling and you have knowledge about a product of one of our partners, that could be a really great opportunity for you. So if that should be all from me, but if Mallory or Dave have any other plugs that you guys want to talk about, we have a couple minutes.
Yeah, I would just say one final note. LinkedIn is a really good resource right now. If you are just if you're struggling, you're trying to find something, or if you submitted something to the website and by chance you haven't heard back or something like that, I'm just speaking for Datashield. Don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn or someone else who works at Datashield and say, hey, did you guys see my resume? It's perfectly fine. You're always welcome to do that because sometimes we do get busy, but we always do try to look at resumes. Sometimes when we're busy, we need a little bit of a reminder, which is perfectly acceptable. To hit us up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I was going to say we have quite a few cybersecurity roles that we're hiring for right now. So if anybody wants to connect with me, feel free to do so on LinkedIn, or you can always reach out via our website. But yeah, it's a good time to be looking for a job.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, guys.